June is PTSD Awareness Month, and here we are, trauma therapists. We're gonna talk about this.
Yes, it's exciting. It's a good topic to talk about, I think.
I think so, because there's so many people who are struggling, and as mental health counselors ourselves who specialize with PTSD, we have a lot to say. I remember the first time I saw somebody with a horrible case of PTSD. It was a first responder, actually a firefighter, and I was jaw dropped. I mean, the stories he was telling me, I hadn't heard things like that before.
Right.
I'm not a first responder.
Right.
My life up to that point, I would think it was in my mid 30s. I had heard, about some traumas that people had, but I was just getting started as an EMDR therapist. And I remember hearing the things that he told me and the amount of things that he had witnessed.
Right.
And I was jaw dropped. I was horrified for him just to think about. And that caused me to start to really consider that every time I saw a first responder or somebody else who had a lot of trauma in their life. Like, this isn't just a one-time event for this person. This isn't just a one thing they've seen. This is like tonight's call.
Right.
Right.
Like, they never know what they're walking into.
Right.
We have to be prepared for it.
Exactly. And so, I've heard, first responders say they've seen children die, they've seen rapes, they've like all kinds of things. They've almost got to kill themselves.
Right.
Yeah. And so then they just got to go to bed that night and go to work the next day.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing, honestly, that they can do it day in and day out. And honestly, Monica, I mean, similar experience as you. It's like when we as therapists enter into some of these spaces with clients where you hear these stories that you're like, I'm shocked even hearing it, but you lived it and experienced it. And then in some professions continue to live and experience it day in and day out. It really, I think you start to realize as a therapist that it's such sacred ground that you're in with people, that you get to, it's such an honor to get to hear stories and walk alongside people in their trauma. And honestly teaches you so much as a therapist, right? Teaches you to hold space for people. That I think one of the best things we as therapists can do for somebody who's walking through PTSD is simply our presence, right? Being able to be with them in it, where they don't feel alone.
I so agree. And I know in Life Model, we talk about the idea of capacity, like, how do we build capacity, to be able to hold space with some of these stories? Like I said, that first time I was jaw dropped, I was kind of at a loss. Like, what do I do with this? I don't even know. I can't believe you experienced this.
Right.
So I couldn't really join him at the level he needed to be joined or attuned to.
Yes.
And I think that process for us as therapists is so important because we see so many types. I remember interviewing a therapist once. I have a private practice here in Davidson, North Carolina, and it's a small practice. There's 8 of us. And through the years, I've done interviews for new therapists. And I remember one therapist said to me in the interview, she said, "Well, I don't want to deal with trauma." And I was like, what profession are we interviewing for? Right. Like, I was real shocked by that comment. And I was thinking, she's a bit of a rude awakening, right? Because you're not really a therapist who isn't going to deal with trauma. Like, that is life, right? And I had another therapist say to me at one point, like, not everybody has trauma. And I'm thinking, oh, that's interesting. Like, I think there's different types of trauma, right? Just like there's different types of PTSD, right? Like, trauma isn't just rape and murder. Like, there are a lot of different types of trauma. And I know with PTSD there are too. So here at PTSD Awareness Month, maybe you and I could just talk about a few different types, because sometimes people, they have this underlying mental health issue of depression, anxiety, or addiction, or personality disorder. And then on top of it, they have PTSD. It's not like I have PTSD instead of depression.
That's right.
PTSD can be comorbid, right? Along with other mental health issues. PTSD can be acute. And last like a month to 3 months and just, and then I metabolize it. I kind of get through it. Or it can be chronic where the symptoms persist and it's probably going to be more chronic when it's more intense.
Yeah. Right.
Did I see, a person get murdered versus I saw my spouse get murdered or something like this. Right?
How
do you get over that in 3 months?
Exactly. Right. Well, and then you also have complex PTSD, right?
Yes.
Which can be such a variety of things. Sometimes it can be what we were just talking about in some professions where it's this prolonged, repeated trauma that we're going through over and over and over and over again. Sometimes it can even be simply growing up in a home where there's constant abuse or neglect or these symptoms in the family that continue to recur over time, where they have developed these very long-term strategies of having to deal with trauma, but it's chronic, right? They have these chronic symptoms of being emotionally dysregulated, low sense of self-esteem or sense of self, where there's a lot of hard work to do, which is probably why you're experiencing therapists who say, I don't want to work in trauma, because sometimes it's hard stuff to wade into as a therapist, right? This is not easy work.
Exactly. And I think a lot because I'm a developmental trauma expert. Like that's one of my specialties. I have really gotten into that over the last probably 15 years. And it's fascinating. I really do a lot with the, developmental trauma, EMDR and such. And so I'm thinking about what's the difference between developmental trauma and PTSD, right? PTSD can be something that we experience as an adult. And let's just say, we had a pretty good childhood, or at least it was decent. We aren't traumatized at a high level because of it. However, I go into my adulthood and I experience a trauma, right? And that is going to give me PTSD. And I'll be able to get over that a lot more quickly than if it's a developmental trauma type of thing. Because it's this, like you said, like CPTSD, the complex PTSD, which is really a buzzword in our therapeutic world in the last several years, but it's that prolonged exposure to the abuse, to the neglect, to this long-term situation that's going to cause me to dissociate or to have identity disturbances, difficulties in all relationships. And in that case, I may have CPTSD and dissociation, but I'm also going to have a lot of other things like personality disorders and such going on. And so I think sometimes as therapists, we get people into our office and we think, okay, well, I know they have PTSD, but what else is going on here? And there's a lot going on. And which one do we start with? Right?
That's right. That's right. Well, because when you look at all of the different things that it can turn into, right now, that's why I think it is considered complex, because we're looking at this from so many different angles. It's not, it may have started with the trauma, which needs to get addressed, but now we're also dealing with a personality disorder, right? Or a mood dysregulation disorder. That's really impacting their ability, their capacity to live life, which affects so many different areas. When you can't hold down a job, right? And you think about hierarchy of needs. I mean, there's so many things that are being affected when trauma played such an early role, and we're seeing this break down throughout time.
Yes, I totally agree. And I'm thinking for us as therapists, we have to be able to, like I said earlier, have the capacity or stay grounded within ourselves and be well ourselves, because and that's our thing. I mean, there's secondary PTSD too. We can vicariously experience PTSD from the trauma of the clients. Think about journalists. They're going to experience that. First responders, like having a spouse who's traumatized and then feeling that, our child who's traumatized.
Yeah.
I mean, PTSD is a thing, and we've got to treat ourselves as well. And we have to, if we're not grounded within ourselves as we're experiencing what's going on with the client, we won't be able to have the clarity of mind working from our prefrontal cortex, right? We're going to be working from our back of our brain if we have PTSD. We're not going to be able to live from our prefrontal cortex to think, what's the least damaging solution? What's the next step here?
That's right.
What's the, our executive functioning system might not be working like it needs to in order for us to be able to treat the client like we need to.
Right. I'm curious for you, Monica, when you are sitting with, because, we both work with trauma, we're both hearing stories that the average person is not hearing, right? If I were to come home and share some of these stories, I mean, people, I'm just curious for you, what do you do to take care of yourself as you are sitting with people in trauma?
Well, thank you for asking that. And I was just thinking about how, like, really us, being involved with the Center for Transformation Institute and Life Model is all about this, right? And I think the last 10 years I've been on this journey. And if anybody has been listening to any of my past, videos and audio recordings, this is what I'm talking about. Is like, the Life Model has helped me so much to figure out how to do self-care so that I can grow my capacity. Betty Lacine up in Rochester, who's a child play therapist working with all kinds of trauma, she said, the number one thing Life Model has helped me do is develop more capacity.
Yeah.
And so what does that even mean? Well, what I do is I have joyful connection with God and others. On my off time, I'm playing, I'm having fun, I'm connected. I'm getting my joy tank filled up. And a lot of times with my clients, that's what it feels like too. Like, we're having a fun time. My groups, like, we have so much fun together. I feel so filled up when I'm with them. I'm like, is this work? This is awesome. So I think that, and then those healthy rhythms, like, I go to bed at a certain time, I get up, I eat right. And I know you do too. I just came out and stayed with you in Denver, and you're exercising, you're eating right. So anything else you would add to that?
Gosh, one of the things that I have found has helped me a lot is Life Model teaches a lot about catching your capacity, right? Like, knowing when you are going offline, resetting your nervous system. I don't remember who it was that coined this phrase, but as therapists, we loan out our nervous systems to our clients. Yes. And so remembering in moments where we are at capacity, these stories, there are moments in session that I have to catch myself and take a deep breath, reset my nervous system, have these moments with the Lord going, Lord, what do I do in this moment? Right? How do I show up well for this client? It's hard work, but it also reminds me that they may be at capacity too, right? So when I take a deep breath, I'm like, gosh, maybe we need to slow this down a little bit. But a lot of the same things that you shared, Monica, right? Spreading joy, appreciation, healthy rhythms, all of those things, because we can get traumatized too in the process as therapists sitting in these hard places with people. And if we want to continue to show up well, be healthy ourselves and do this for a long time, we have to make sure that we're practicing what we preach, right?
That's so good. And, I think one of the themes too here is this idea that we learn from one another. I mean, if there's people listening right now and they're like, hey, I hadn't thought about it that way before. Like, podcasts are so popular right now because we learn and grow from one another. And I think in Life Model, we talk about needing a model. We need a model another brain to model how to do this. And I'm just, from what you were saying, I'm thinking about how Dr. Wilder is such a model for us. You know, he's the main neurotheologian, clinical psychologist with Life Model Works. And I remember something he said years ago about how to do that, which would be the brain skill, the relational brain skill of taking a breather, right?
Yes.
Like knowing when to rest,
Yeah.
you know, knowing when you've maxed out your capacity. But he said, while he was listening to someone, right, holding eye contact, holding gaze, connecting, he would purposefully look down. And then take a breath, reconnect himself to himself, and then go back. So it's like, I'm connecting, I'm with you. Now I'm taking a rest, I'm taking a breather. And then I'll come back again, and then I'll take a rest. And so we just have to be kind to ourselves. We have to be gentle to ourselves as therapists. Let's just say to all the therapists out here who are listening, thank you for your work.
Yes, absolutely.
You are the game changers in culture. You are the silent influencers. You are the people who are with people day in, day out, loving them well, helping society, helping culture survive through these things and thrive. And so thank you for your work. Take care of yourself.
Yes.
And we'll look forward to talking again very soon.